Hey, good evening, everyone. Live here from the studio in West Palm Beach. It is sunset hour, and I wanted to touch on critical thinking and how important it is in SEO and how complicated it is. I read something really funny earlier that says if you ask 3 SEOs for definition of SEO, you'll get 4 different answers. Um, so many people are holding on to these incomplete models or frameworks of SEO. It's as an industry uniquely vulnerable to myths, superstitions, misinformation. A lot of that comes from sort of different perspectives or points of observation within SEO. For those of you who know me, I've spent 26 years in SEO. I've owned primary position for 22 of those years. I did spend 10 years as, well, 8 years as head of marketing for a startup that went from 20 million to 250 million. I've worked in 3 different continents, and I've spent time working on both the Google product support line in their official product support forum, which is volunteer led, and a lot of time talking about SEO on LinkedIn, X, and Reddit, and a lot of time on Reddit. I get about 1.5 million views a month on Reddit. I'm probably one of the most prolific SEOs and writers. And I think I have at least one unique point of view of observation, and that is there is a solid tribalism within SEO. There are practitioners, there are theoretical researchers, which I sometimes refer to as the ivory tower. There are developers or web technicians, and then there's like the PageRank SEOs, the people, I guess, like me, like Gagan, Harpreet, Edward Sturm, so on. Um, the sort of like fundamentals of how Google works. If I had to compare myself to someone, it would be someone like Lars Lofgren. We share a lot in common of how we understand how Google works. And it's interesting that as you go around the different tribes and you get the different points of observation, things change. So, for example, web engineers who work in agencies or in-house at companies that are big enough to afford web teams, they're not just designing and building websites, but they're also often handling SEO. Sometimes they're handling SEO on behalf of different people that have different responsibilities. It could be growth, it could be SEO directors, it could be multiple SEO people, or sometimes they are the SEO team and they sometimes hire in SEO experts. And every SEO you talk to has got a different view. Most of the time, SEOs sell by selling confidence and confidence in their art. And like a lot of humans, we don't all keep our model and framework up to date. And it's important to be critical, not just of what we think, but why we think, and to do it often. Too many people have their model wrapped up with their ego. You see that mostly on Reddit, where it's because of the anonymity part, people get really angry and can get really cross and can get quite vindictive about it. I'll give you an example. As we see Google deprecating schema, a lot of people are refusing to let it go. And there's a couple of myths about schema. It's not just one. There's actually a whole plethora of issues with schema. One is that people believe that schema helps boost ranking. Part of that is control. We don't want to give away something we think that controls our ranking in Google or a standing in Google, like XML sitemaps as well. Part of it is that we think that schema gives us an advantage because not everyone can do it, and everyone can do schema. That's the funny thing about schema. It's not technically complicated. It doesn't have any third-party validation. What I mean by that is if you look at something like SSL, you have SSL companies provide SSL, it's validated. It means that Google trusts the provider, and that allows it to trust the connection. And so with different points of view, people put different emphasis on their points of view. And I think if you look at schema and schema as a myth, the worst place for it to go is with web engineers on one side, but then also with geogrifters on the other side, where they're trying to almost establish credibility and gravitas with the concept of geo, and somehow schema sounds magical and powerful. All schema does is repeat the same data in a way that old school text scrapers could scrape it. Google deprecated schema a long, long time ago. It's more than 6 years ago. They deprecated it to just highly authoritative government and healthcare domains, people like the CDC, the NIH. And it was only a requirement if you put multiple FAQs in one page, which is also only good for high authority sites or sites that want to use authority to increase the click-through rate of a page. It's not very, very good as a concept for sites building authority, like below 50 DA. I made a walking video earlier that talks about the doctrine of Google, right? Google has this basic doctrine of not trusting the publisher. What that means is you have millions and millions of pages on the exact same topic in the exact same index, all staking a claim to rank in that index. No matter what you think about SEO, that's essentially what it boils down to. Every single page that's called, let's say, Coca-Cola bottles, that is aimed at the index for people searching for Coca-Cola bottles, every page is relevant within that index. A lot of SEOs think that SEO is about creating structure, about doing research, about convincing Google you're the real deal. And I just don't know how to tell you how impossible that is and how naive I think it is to believe in something like that. Yes, you can do some basic fact checking with LLMs. We all know that the capital of France is Paris, that the capital of the United States is Washington, D.C., but how much information can Google check? LLMs are hallucinating, they're making up information. We can show with SEO that we can prove that LLMs don't know anything. We can throw things that make them pivot 180 degrees mid conversation. Google cannot declare who's the best printer, the best phone, the best CRM, the best cloud service. It doesn't try, it's never tried. It was in the DOJ's book of evidence, a slide taken from their executive onboarding slides from the HR department that said, we don't understand content, but we're very good at pretending. And this has been a myth in Google for like 26 years. So people are very slow to update their models. You can see this in internet arguments all the time. People make an assumption, they fight it because their ego won't let it go, and it's something that they could have just Googled and would have shown them that there was no point having an argument with the other person. It's okay for other people to be right. The other problem with schema is that for a lot of people, they have been promising it to customers, to people they work with, to teams, to their managers, that schema is very important to SEO. And Google keeps saying it's not. And that's when you hear the counter argument, well, you can't believe everything Google tells you. And now we hear the counter argument that, well, it's very important for other LLMs. Even though LLMs have never said so, none of them say so. The fact is that once an LLM is given a document in a query fan out, it's already ranking. The LLM isn't picking those documents. It's got very, very little say. So let's break these myths down step by step, 1 to 10, very, very simply. First of all, LLMs do not process the HTML document. They seem to be fed the body. They're looking for the text. They're able to understand and interpret the text. We can put questions into pages, and Google and LLMs have been taking them out all this time. Most people don't actually think about it. It's only when people say, oh, it's very important, then someone actually taps them on the shoulder or reminds them that it's not really that important, that these arguments even happen. I've never used it. I've got maybe 250,000 live FAQs out there with no schema anywhere. So Google's been doing this for decades. Google didn't have LLM technology 20 years ago, and it was able to deal with FAQs on an individual page basis. The whole FAQ schema is actually relatively new. So we see people having arguments on the internet. They're not wanting to update their model because it takes time. It takes a lot of time and energy to read, refresh. And so we update our model in bits and pieces. And some people get left behind and some people understand. For example, you're watching my channel. There are other SEOs. There are SEOs that are going to say the opposite of what I'm saying. There's Google. It has channels. It has lots and lots of liaison people. There's John Mueller, Gary Iles, Martin Splitt. You have other SEOs that have blogs, newsletters, all saying different things. Within the schema myth, I think a lot of web engineers want to believe that they can control Google and tell Google what to do. And if you look at their point of view, they're mostly building macro SEO, right? So they're building a architecture that delivers a vast number of pages, and they're worried about crawlability, and they're worried about speed, and they're worried about their code not failing. And funny enough, that mirrors exactly how they emphasize SEO. So if you go to tech SEO on Reddit, and ask people what is the most important part for your SEO strategy, they'll tell you you need schema, you need to have a very fast website, CWVs are critical, your tech stack is very important, you need to make pages crawlable and indexable. And all of this I've pointed out in X and gotten in trouble for it, but all of these things are flimsy at best, right? First of all, CWVs don't make your site rank better. Again, it falls in under Google's doctrine of don't trust the publisher. Google has said it 100 times. They have videos on it. A lot of people in these big debates on Reddit where people will only read the thread they're in, but if you read the rest of the debate, people will fill in, well, how come every time I check the rankings, the top ranking sites aren't the fastest? Why is it that when Ahrefs or SEMrush or SE Ranking do reports, it's not the fastest websites? And that's because faster pages don't mean more accurate pages, right? If you've got a slow website and you make it go faster, the content doesn't get improved. If users are going to poke a stick, it's because of delivery and inoperability and things like their Wi-Fi signal or their data signal or how far they are or how slow the web is as a whole or their ISP. Those things are going to have a greater impact. So here we are today. FAQ schemas deprecated 6 years ago. It was fully deprecated and actually scrubbed from the Google archive today, from the Google engineering documents today, and yet people are still saying that it's important, you should still do it. Some people are still saying it's important for ranking. We have to encourage people to use critical thinking, and critical thinking isn't just critiquing other people or attacking other people because they're posting news, right? A lot of people get attacked. A lot of posts get downvoted to oblivion because they're posting something that people don't want to hear. Downvoting something on Reddit doesn't make it go away. It's childish. And it speaks to the problem, right? That people that are forming tribes, and if you look at X and you look at founders and people talking about SEO and you look at the tools that web engineers are building, it's kind of like sometimes I feel that web engineers feel that because they can build a website, that they're endowed with how SEO works because they all share the same things. It's all got to be about page speed. Google cares about tech stack, and that gives you sort of like trust. Google can't evaluate your site and your tech stack. It doesn't see it. It just sees the HTML. Crawl is either just fetch your page. It's almost binary. Apart from server side and client side rendering, it's a binary operation. If Google can't fetch the page, it can't do anything. You can't make it crawlable. There aren't scales of crawlability. There aren't scales of indexability. Either you have authority or you don't. You can't increase crawl budget by deleting 10% of your pages. You don't rank higher because you've been crawled more often or indexed more often. It's authority. So if you look at a tribe that wants to build authority out of its model, and rely on tech stack and page speed and schema and architecture, and believing that little spider opens up the nav menu and that's the most important page and it just sort of bounces around the site. There are so many documents, so many statements from Google stating the otherwise, but they don't want to update that. So how do these tribes self-exist? Do they not trust SEOs? Do they just think that SEO is built in? I've had conversations with people where they think SEO and web development are the same thing, that it's built in, that you need to, if you want to be an SEO, you should learn how to be a coder. I used to be a coder. I don't code anymore. I don't see the point. I don't enjoy it. I don't see why someone needs to be a coder to be an SEO, because SEOs have to understand authority, relationships, understand how Google's mechanisms work. That's not in the tech stack. That's not in crawlability and crawl optimization. So when I see people saying, well, we added schema and it's worked beautifully, well, remove the schema. Tell me it doesn't work, because I know it'll still work. Your schema is just repeating the same content back to Google. Like I said, it's not like your schema has been approved by Harvard University or MIT, and therefore Google's going to rank it higher. It doesn't give you an advantage. There's no sense in building systems that go out and crawl and index the whole web based on relevancy and then throw it all out the window because these pages have schema. It doesn't make it any faster. If you think about like the whole challenge of crawling the whole page and indexing it and then saying, well, this is schema, so let's go back and uncrawl, because you have to crawl a page to find out if it's schema, right? You can't ask the server and go like, hey, does this page have schema? You have to download the page. You've already downloaded it. So you're not saving time. You're not making things go faster. I think it's just something that either people want to believe or won't relinquish control. Yet when people share this on Reddit, they get downvoted, they get attacked, they get stalked, they have their wiki pages edited because people don't want to hear it. Guys, it's not that person's fault for telling you and trying to inform the system and the community that things are changing. And actually, they changed a long time ago. So how do we get these 3 tribes or 4 different tribes to work together where SEOs and web developers can't live in 2 different environments and side by side ignore each other, where you have developers on X who saying, look, I'm building my website, it's super fast, but it doesn't rank. And SEOs are coming to them saying, look, you're not building authority properly. You're not getting backlinks properly. And they're like, oh, well, I got 200 backlinks from a friend for 10 cents. That's not authority. It's not how it works. So that's what I want to talk about. I think it's a big part of SEO. I can and will talk about other parts of SEO, but I think a big part of it that we need to talk about is critical thinking, understanding different points of view and the different tribes within SEO. And yeah, stay tuned for more.